This is the Crew First Culture podcast. I want to thank Woods Forcible Entry Door Kits for sponsoring the program. Go check them out at Facebook at Woods Forcible Entry Door Kits or on Instagram at Woods Forcible Entry. Enjoy the show.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back once again to the Crew First Culture podcast. My name is Jeremy, and as always, thank you very much for spending some time with us today. Guest today is Mr. Kyle Kondoff. So, Kyle reached out to me a little while back, just telling me a little bit about his story and some of the things he is dealing with, some of the challenges he has faced and overcome, and just feels like he's got a message to share. And I totally agree with that. And so I will let him kind of get into that more in a little bit. But how are you today, Kyle?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
Doing good. Doing good. Just got home from work and kids are in school, which is always a question mark nowadays. They're home for a week, they're at school for a week, and I just never know. But glad to have you on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So Kyle is his story, like I mentioned, he's a diabetic, and I got to be honest, I don't have a lot of knowledge with that topic, and so I'm not going to pretend like I do, but I will just kind of steer the conversation in that area and just kind of introduce you. But he mentioned that there are a lot of firefighters out there dealing with the same thing and those struggles and all that. And so, like I said, I feel like, and I've talked about this before, Kyle. I'm not going to steal the microphone for you for much longer before I let you talk, but I talk a lot about leadership. I talk a lot about culture and those things I love. I love talking about them, and that's why I have guests on that I enjoy talking about it so much. But here lately, I have kind of felt the calling of getting into, people's stories, people's challenges, the things that really are out there that people aren't hearing about. And you reached out to me in pretty much the perfect time, and it kind of occurred to me, well, this is really kind of what I want to get more into. And so, that being said, I will kind of hand it to you, and we'll just let the conversation go where it goes, and tell us about yourself. Tell us about kind of that whole topic and what you deal with.
Yeah, so as you said before, my name is Kyle Kondoff. I am a type 1 diabetic. So there's several types of diabetes. Type 1 diabetes being the one that you are on insulin for the rest of your life. You have to act as your pancreas. And so that's what I do. For those on the podcast, obviously, if we're on video, they can see, but I've got my insulin pump attached here on my arm. And then over on my other arm, I have what we call it's a Dexcom, but it's a continuous glucose monitor. So it gives me a new reading of my blood sugar, which, as first responders, we respond to somebody's house and check their blood sugar, part of our vitals and everything. But I get a new reading every 5 minutes because with our blood sugar, it changes so often as diabetics that depends on what we eat, how much insulin we have, and everything else. As type 2 or type 1. Type 1 is more common. I think that's like 34 million Americans, much more common worldwide. But a lot of people think that it has to do with your diet. It has to do with genetics. It has to do with diet. It has to do with a lot of things. But I will say that just because I see it a lot and all the time here, and it's funny because the guys in my station, they call me out whenever we hear a commercial, but there's a lot of diabetic commercials coming on TV because they're going to hit that big target area. Obviously, it's over 10% of the U.S. population has it. So they want to target those people. Well, on those commercials, you hear Ozempic, you hear some of the other ones, whatever. They've got firefighters on there because why? A lot of people think, well, firefighters are lazy and fat and do a lot of things, whatever. Whenever they get older, they kind of get like that. But in my mind, it's actually because we're trustworthy, because they trust us. I mean, where else in a job can you go into a house and, rummage around people's stuff because there's something on fire and then, have $50,000 of cash sitting there and then, you're saving it, you're giving it to them. I mean, I've done it myself where it's an electric guitar or, something crazy like that. and those people are so thankful for that, but they trust us no matter what with their stuff. And so that's kind of what my thinking is as to why they put firefighters on there, because we're trustworthy. And even the people that are on the commercials, they're not really overweight or anything like that, but it affects a lot of us. And a lot of the education that I hear for firefighting and prevention is prevention and things like that. And so it's not frustrating, but it's more of like there's another target audience in there that is already diabetic, that is already trying to take care of it. And that also, I know because I've reached out to quite a few of them, there's also a lot of type 1 diabetics that are in firefighting. They could have been diagnosed whenever they were a kid, or like me, I was diagnosed when I was 27. So I just happened to go through my 5-year anniversary, diaversary is what we call it, but back on January 10th. And we celebrate that because it's a big day, because every single day we have a disease that's trying to kill us, whether it's not enough insulin, not enough food, whatever it is. And so for us, we celebrate that day in celebration of living through another 365 days. That's what we find important. So, but a little bit of my backstory though. I'll start it off back whenever I was 19 years old, because this is exactly whenever I think that something in my body messed up enough to kind of get to the point where I have type 1. Again, genetics, type 2, type 1. We're not exactly sure how it all happens, but some kind of trauma in your life. Some people think it's vaccinations and stuff like that, but your body fights off, your immune system fights off, and it kills off your beta cells. So back whenever I was 19, and actually the whole reason why I got into firefighting in the first place was I was a pedestrian versus vehicle. And I was the pedestrian, and I live in San Antonio. SAFD got there, and it's interesting because the paramedics kind of a little bit, weren't too sure if I was going to make it and stuff, but they went through the motions and everything, and had the AED, and eventually I was airlifted to Wilford Hall after they got me back and stuff. But I was in the hospital and had to learn to walk again and everything else, but that was a traumatic point in my life. And then not until, like I said, 5 years ago, was I diagnosed with diabetes. I didn't really have anything throughout that time that would really kill off my beta cells. So that's kind of why I think it was something in there that was kind of latent. And so anyway, that kind of addresses that. But the whole reason why I found out, and the reason why, I wanted to speak about this, because I was unsure, number one, if I could do the job, number two, why it even happened to me, and number three, what I could do about it. But I was working offshore off the coast of Louisiana on a confined space rescue team for the oil rigs. And whenever I was out there, I was drinking a lot, and I was going to the bathroom a lot, and there was times where I had blurry vision. And the funny part is, now knowing everything that I know about diabetes, the three most common symptoms, signs and symptoms, are frequent thirst, frequent urination, and blurry vision. So I had it all. And at the time, we kind of all had headaches because of the welding machines and different things going on out there, and kind of called it, where it was just kind of pushed it off to that. And then I also have acid reflux, GERD, and I was taking Nexium. And the side effect of that is dry mouth. So that's why I was drinking everything all the time. And what happens whenever you drink? You got to go to the bathroom. So every single symptom, we kind of just justified it and didn't think anything about it. It wasn't, and I started in the oil field in 2014, but I was diagnosed January 10th, 2016. So really all that time I'd been living undiagnosed, and I was just kind of damaging my body at that point. But I didn't realize it until somebody at a hospital that I worked at said, "You might be diabetic," when I said that I had like over 36 hours of blurry vision at that time. And I thought she was crazy. I was like, me? 160 pounds soaking wet. And that was the other thing too, was I had gone through serious weight loss. Because your body is trying to, you're basically going to the bathroom so much, you're pissing out your sugar. And that's how you're losing your weight. You're not getting enough calories in, and your body's just basically sick the whole time. So it's definitely an issue in there. And weight loss, fast weight loss like that is definitely another symptom of it. But I had been that, and I was like, I mean, all I know about was type 2 diabetes at the time. And so for me to say, 160 pounds soaking wet as a 27-year-old and being diagnosed as a type 2 diabetic was just absolutely crazy. But I went to the doctor. I went to the ER that night, and they just gave me fluids and told me to take metformin and check my blood sugar and see my PCP. And so I did that, and my PCP was actually on vacation, so I saw his colleague, and we started talking about it. He's like, "Oh yeah, anybody can be type 2 diabetic. It doesn't matter what size you are, or anything like that." And so he continued the metformin, and I didn't get on insulin. I didn't have a pump. I didn't have a continuous glucose monitor. I had a meter, and they told me to check my blood sugar once a day in the morning, and that was it. I was high 200s and low 300s. And I mean, yeah, we, as first responders, we look at it and we're like, yeah, that's kind of normal whenever we go on diabetic calls, but it's not healthy. Those are not healthy numbers. So it was like 3 weeks later, I went back and saw my doctor, and he took one look at me, and he said right away, "Kyle, there's no way you're type 2. You have to be type 1. So we'll run some tests and figure it out." And so I always joke and say, ever since then, I've been on that magical drug called insulin that regulates my blood sugar. So that's kind of where I came in, diagnosis wise. But at the time, I was freaking out. I'm diagnosed as a diabetic, and I'm a firefighter. And am I going to be able to do the job? Will my department keep me? And what am I going to have to do special in order to do the job? So for me at that time, I thought about, do I even want to be a career firefighter anymore? Because I don't think anybody's going to take me. And that was my first mistake, really, was not reaching out to anybody and not talking to anybody about it, because I freaked myself out before I had even addressed it with anybody else. And so I had been on the oil rigs, but I got a job out in the oil fields of South Texas as a oil field firefighter. And we were sitting on the pad and monitoring the fuelers, making sure nothing was going to happen or anything like that. But obviously it wasn't structural. It wasn't, wild lane. It wasn't anything that obviously we're doing as career guys. And so I wasn't happy out there. And it came to a point where I got to talk to one of my battalion chiefs on the phone, and I told him my frustrations and, my concerns with my diabetes. And he said, "Kyle, there's absolutely no reason why you can't be one of our firefighters, why you can't be career and everything. We know that you take care of yourself. We know, what you do." I posted on social media about it, trying to encourage other people to say, "Hey, look, we can't let anything hold us back." And so that was kind of an eye-opening experience for me, because at that point I decided, you know what, I'm going to try to go test some places. I'm going to do whatever I can. And I kept on testing places, and I got in with one department. I tested, and I made sure, right off the bat to tell them. And because of ADA, because of the Americans with Disabilities Act, and obviously HIPAA and everything else, you don't have to tell them, and they can't ask those questions on the interview.
Yeah.
But for me, it was important to be honest, because I don't just want to go in there and say, hey, I'm a great firefighter, prove everything that I can do, and then on day one be like, oh yeah, I'm type 1, and by the way, I'm really not suitable for this job or anything like that. So I wanted them to make the decision. I think it was important to be honest. So for me to be honest with them, they were honest with me, and they told me, they said, as long as you can take care of it, and as long as our doctor signs off, I got in with that department. And luckily, I was going to start with them. And then I was training over at my volunteer department. And unfortunately, we were doing some pump ops training, and I was holding a nozzle by myself. And a guy that didn't exactly know how to work the truck was training this other guy, and he pressured it up a little bit too much on a smooth bore, pressured it up to a little bit more than a fog. And we only had 50 feet. So, I'm not sure if he thought it was a cross lay or what, but it lifted me up and spun me around, and I fractured my left leg, ankle, and foot in 7 places. So, so I was 4 days away from starting with that department, and unfortunately, I was out for over a year, and they kind of had to forego my spot at that point. So that was a little frustrating, but it ended up being a blessing in disguise because now I got on with this department that I'm on today, and I went to my interview, and it was right after 9/11, which that was actually the day that I was supposed to start, so it was a year later. It was right after 9/11, and I had done the Memorial Stair Climb in San Antonio here at the Tower of the Americas. And I went to my interview, and I told them, exactly what happened. But I said I climbed the tower. We climbed for 110 stories. It's 65, so I climbed it twice. And they said, well, if you can climb that tower, I'm pretty sure you can firefight. So I think you'll be okay. So luckily enough, they gave me the position, and I've been doing good there ever since for 2.5 years. So it's been pretty nice. But I just think that it's important for people to understand that as a type 1 diabetic, as a type 2 diabetic, anybody with autoimmune issues or anything like that, we just can't let ourselves be held back. No matter if you're firefighting, police officer, lawyer, doctor, whatever. Honestly, as a diabetic in general, there's like 2 things that really you can't do, and they're kind of getting away from some of that. The military is looking into, can they keep diabetics and can they go overseas and stuff? They, unfortunately, if you get it while you're in the military, you will get kicked out because they can't have you on insulin and stuff like that. Yeah. And the other thing, it differs by state, but is a commercial truck driver. Last year we had a big win that the FAA came out and said that type 1s, as long as they're regulated, they can be pilots. So a commercial pilots. So it kind of changes things, but people get in that mindset, and that's the problem. Is whenever you get in that mindset of I can't, you don't go out and you don't investigate and you don't look at it to see what you can do. And I mean, I think that's important in diabetes. I think that's important in firefighting. I think that's important in life.
Yep. Yeah. So, well, I'm sitting here writing notes as you're talking, and I think probably where I want to start is kind of cleaning up a little bit of a timeline, just so I have an accurate idea of all these events. Because dang, I mean, you've just just in the, I don't know what, 5 minutes you sat there and gave a short spiel about your story. There is a lot going on there, and
yeah,
that's good, and because that, I say that because that's exactly what I was talking about earlier, about letting people tell their stories. Because you're here speaking on a topic that is you're passionate about, the type 1 diabetic, being a firefighter. That is a good message for you to be sharing. But man, you just in what you're saying right there, that there's so much more of that story. Your auto pet injury, where you're having to basically learn how to walk again, and coming back from that, you're about to get hired on and break your leg and lose that job. And just that inner fight to keep going. And like you said, you're not telling yourself no, you're going and doing the work and going and getting it. And that is exactly what I'm talking about. And I completely agree with you. It doesn't matter if you're a firefighter or a nurse or a stay-at-home parent, having that fight inside you to not tell yourself no before you even try. It's so important. And a lot of this stuff I try to, I gain, I guess I could say, from being a parent. Anybody that's a parent, you gain leadership, you gain a lot of things before you ever are anything in the business world, or whatever you want to call it. But that is such an important message for us to share with our kids too. It doesn't matter what you're facing right now. You can beat it. You can keep going. You can gain, the things that you want if you keep trying, if you work hard. And so anyway, I love the story. Like I said, I want to, so you got the prognosis 5 years ago. I guess just the timeline wise, so when you were diagnosed, you were not a firefighter, is that correct?
I was a firefighter, so I've been in the firefighting industry for 10 years, but
Okay.
I was in the oil field firefighting. I was on the oil rig and stuff like that, but I was a volunteer for 8 years, and I've been a career for the last 2.5 now. So
I got you. So that's kind of what I was just kind of trying to get a good clearer picture of this. So when you're talking about the confined space rescue on oil rigs, that was a part of the fire service. It wasn't just you were
it was a private company, but
okay, I got you.
Yep. Firefighting detail, obviously.
But still, no, I got it.
Rescue and stuff, technical stuff.
So you said.
So yeah, I was. I'll clarify it, but I'll say it because there's significant dates for me, obviously. But September 8th, 2007 is whenever I was hit by the car, and like I said, I was 19 years old. But unfortunately, it was 10 years to the day. It was September 7th, 2017, whenever I broke my leg at the fire station. So, yeah. So needless to say, in 2027, I'm going to stay home those 2 days. It's going to be.
Yeah, I would say so.
but yeah, I mean, like you said, I was hit by the car and I came back from that, and it's funny because my captain specifically says, well, how many followers do you have, whatever, and I don't do Instagram or any of that for that. I'm not posting for the likes or anything like that, but he calls me an influencer, and I say I'm not. I'm just somebody out there that's trying to put my story out there, trying to encourage somebody, because I always said, even if it's type 1, if it's firefighting, if it's anything, if you encourage one person, if you help change their life, then it's all worth it. It doesn't matter how many people you reach. You got to reach one at least. And so he said that, but a lot of my posts that I put out there, I say, I was hit by the car. I had the leg broken, and I had type 1, and no matter what, you overcome those obstacles. And I tell people whenever I say that, because a lot of people look at it and they're like, man, number one, you've had a lot of stuff going on, and number two, well, I haven't had all that kind of stuff in my life, and some people even look at it like, oh, well, now I feel like, I mean, for lack of a better word, a piece of shit, because I'm complaining about these little things, and here you are impacted by these things. We all have our own demons. We all have our own issues that we go through, man. It could be problems at work, and it could be problems at home. It could be whatever. We don't need to compare ourselves to others. So I think that's really important too. We can all overcome different things, but just don't compare yourself to anybody else. You can only compare yourself to who you were yesterday and try to beat that person.
Yeah, absolutely. That's something else that I definitely try to live by and try to say as many times as I can, when the time comes. And I totally agree with that. And something I want to say to kind of lead on, you talked about the just trying to help one person. That's something that I have said myself, and something, I get it. And it's honest. I am doing this in the hopes of adding some value to somebody, and especially when you're starting out something, like you said, you don't consider yourself anything big, you don't consider yourself an influencer or all that, but everybody starts somewhere. So everybody is going to start low or slow. And so that's kind of the mindset you have to have. Just hopefully I can reach one person. And like I said, I understand that, but something that I literally I've heard before, because I've listened to the podcast earlier, but I listened to it again this morning, is the Firefighter Success podcast with Frank Viscuso as the guest. And this is kind of, I'll paraphrase because I don't remember exactly what he said, but he said that, you hear people say that they just hope to reach one person, and he understands that, but he thinks the opposite. He says that if he's going to travel out of state or wherever else for these conferences or classes, he wants to reach every person in that class. If he's taking the time away from his family to do that, he wants to get the most out of it. And I thought it was a really interesting, kind of way to look at it. And I don't disagree with either one. I think they both have, a lot of meat to them. And so that's kind of how I have started feeling is, this is a tiny podcast in the world of podcasts. It's not much more than just a startup at this point, but my goal is to reach everybody. I'm not doing it for the likes, like you said. I'm not doing it for, to be famous or all this. I just want to help as many people as I can. So, like he said, that's kind of the goal, is to reach every single person that we can. If it's like you talked about kind of reaching out to some other podcast to share your message. That's what it takes, is just finding those avenues to get that message out. If it's writing some articles, if it's reaching out to some podcast host, or whatever. And so I feel like you're probably kind of on that same page. As if we help one person, that's awesome. That helps us to know that we're doing good. But the big picture is we want to spread our message to help everybody. And what do you kind of think about that?
Absolutely. I'm something I didn't say was I actually have two full-time jobs. So I work a 48-96 schedule at both. So I have a day off in between. So I do a 48-24 or 48-24. Right now, my wife and I are trying to pay off our house, trying to, do some goals and stuff. So trying to gain some money for all that. And then at a certain point, I will stop that. But I'm trying to figure out things to do with my 4 days off, and currently working on some type of a nonprofit foundation myself in order to get to the bigger picture. There's bigger names out there with Type 1. There's JDRF. There's Type 1 International. There's that's an insulin for all type thing, where their main goal is to try to help people, because drug manufacturers and prescriptions and everything is astronomical. Unfortunately, people are having to figure out if they're going to feed their family, or if they're going to buy their children's insulin or their insulin. And so it's kind of ridiculous. We're not all looking for a handout. We're looking for a hand up, just some kind of help, and lowering the prices and stuff. But anyway, trying to bring awareness to it all is really important. And it's funny because every single year is November is National Diabetes Awareness Month. And whenever we're posting during that month, there's some people who are liking the post and some people who are commenting. And then, throughout the month, because I post every single day, we have challenges to post different things. It brings awareness. And at the end of the month this year, I said, oh, look, here comes Kyle with another diabetes post. But to me, it's not just a diabetes post, because y'all hear about this for a month, but I lived through this, and so many of us lived through this 24/7, 365. And as I said before, wearing a continuous glucose monitor, I'm worried about my blood sugar 24/7, 365. I'm worried about if I have enough insulin in my pump, if I have enough insulin with me. I'm worried if I have my supplies with me. And on top of all that, especially whenever I'm at work 6 days out of the week, then I'm worried about, do I have all that stuff with me at work, in the truck, ready for the call? I have glucose tabs, which is fast acting sugar, in my bunker coat pockets. I have everything ready, for different calls. I can actually say it because the announcement came out last night, but I just got the driver position in my second department. So I'm driver for both jobs. And some people think that's crazy, because especially for type 1 diabetics, for diabetics in general, we're worried about our blood sugar, and we're worried about that stuff whenever we're driving and everything else. I mean, I got to think about driving. I have to think about pumping. I have to think about protecting everybody else, because a lot of people might think that the driver's, oh, it's just a driver, but you have a huge responsibility. You have everybody's responsibility on you at that point. And so I think that trying to bring awareness is a huge issue, but also in the fire service, I think bringing awareness to getting the misnomer of diabetes in general. I think that people need to eat together, yes, but we don't need to all eat the same meal, because there's a lot of people who are celiac disease when they can't eat gluten. I eat low carb and ketogenic diet, so I have a different meal. I try to eat with the crew, and they
Yeah.
try to incorporate some of that whenever they can, but they don't want to eat all that stuff all the time. So I'm
Yeah.
going to prepare my food, and they'll prepare their food, but we'll still eat about the same time.
Yeah.
And there's different times in there where, just trying to bring everybody awareness of what is going on and how I'm feeling today. I mean, there's options on my Dexcom for people to follow me. They can see my blood sugar in real time, and my captain has it because he wants to know how I'm doing and everything. He'll come 3 o'clock in the morning if my sensor's saying low and knock on my door, make sure I'm alive, and that means something to me. It means that he cares about me, and
Yeah.
that's important, because one of my jobs is in Katy, which is outside of Houston, and I'm in San Antonio. So you're talking about a 2.5 hour drive, and even if it was at the firehouse here right down the road, my wife is still asleep and she's still seeing the numbers and stuff. It's important for my captain to be able to see that, somebody that's with me.
Yeah.
And so for him to follow me there, that's bringing awareness to him. That's showing him how much my blood sugar can fluctuate. And whenever I post for the diabetes community, I post some flatline graphs, which is steady blood sugar days, and I post some wonky graphs, some days whenever everything's just going crazy. Adrenaline spikes my blood sugar. I mean, as firefighters, we're on adrenaline spikes all the time,
Yeah.
because of activity, because of calls, because of workouts. And the other thing we run on is coffee, and that causes blood sugar spikes. So just bringing awareness in general to diabetes is important to me, but also bringing awareness to the diabetics that are out there that just think that, oh, woe is me, and they maybe not so much given up, but they don't know that the resources are there. I think is huge. And so to reach those people, I'm trying to figure out exactly how to do it, but
Yeah.
I hope that's what the nonprofit and different things of that nature will be like.
Yeah. That's kind of something else I was thinking about earlier. You talked about, when you were applying for a position on a fire department, you actually admitted to them in the process that you were diabetic, and you didn't have to. I think just that alone right there shows some pretty big courage, because you don't know where that's going to go. Obviously, they can't say, "Hey, we're not going to hire you because of that," but it would probably be pretty easy to find other ways of blaming. Hey, you didn't fit this over here, so we're not going to hire. You know what I mean? And so it does take a lot of courage to be that way. But I think even more, and what I wrote is we hide our issues, we hide our flaws, we hide our weaknesses. That's what firefighters do. I think some of it is just for survival, because I've been a firefighter for almost 19 years. I know that any kind of weakness I show, I'm going to get it worn out, at the firehouse, and I'm obviously not talking about more of a medical issue like we are, but that's just the mentality is if you lead on that, man, that particular thing right there irritates me, so please don't do that. What's going to happen? It's going to be done all the time, because that's just who we are. We like to bug and pester people, but at the same time, we also don't like to show our flaws. We don't like to show any kind of weaknesses. And so I completely believe that there are probably a lot of people out there, maybe two categories. A lot of people out there that know that they're dealing with some stuff like you are, and just don't want to address it because they don't want to show that. Or a lot of people that are dealing with a lot of stuff that you are, and maybe not know what it is. And so, yeah, I think, and obviously this is the stuff you're saying, so I'm not trying to say anything else, but those are two categories of people that this story will hopefully kind of impact. Be honest with what's going on, get some help, because like you said, you're not only a firefighter, but you're twice a firefighter at the same time. I mean, it's not something that is going to affect your job as far as losing it. So you need to need to address it. You need to take care of yourself. And so that's a great message to get out there and just get the help you need.
Yeah, I think that's unfortunately one of the huge topics. You know, there's a hidden world online, and it's called the diabetic online community. We have a huge firefighting community, but man, let me tell you what, the diabetic online community is massive. You've got type 2s and type 1s in there, but they've got Facebook and Instagram. I think they're even on Twitter and stuff. I only have the first two, but anyway, they're all talking about stuff out there, and there's good advice and there's bad advice, as everything in life. Well, a lot of people ask questions about the employers, about going on interviews, about, you know, doing things like that. And they say, should I tell them? Should I do this? Don't tell them. And some people say, don't ever tell them. And I think that's a huge issue, because what happens if you have a low blood sugar? I mean,
Yeah.
my other huge thing that I say is everybody that has anything that would be seizures, epilepsy, type 1 diabetes, or anything like that needs to have some sort of a medical alert bracelet, because as first responders, we're going to look for that. And there's all kinds of people who don't understand how important it is for somebody to know about your condition. You don't have to tell them your life story if you don't want to. We don't all have to be open. I mean, my wife knows I'm a very open book. I mean, I'm an extrovert. She's an introvert. I think that's just kind of the way it works some days.
Yeah.
But for us, it works because I talk to her, and, you know, after a while she starts talking to me. Well, sometimes in that work relationship, you might open up to somebody, and this might be 6 months down the road, and you tell them you're a diabetic, or you tell them you're type 1 diabetic, and they know about that because they have somebody in their life, and they're like, whoa, why didn't you tell us this on day one? Why didn't you tell me this?
Yeah.
You know, I'd have been looking out for you. Because we can't all think, and here's my other problem is, and I won't get into religion, but I am Catholic, so I will say there's only one person who can judge us, and that's the guy upstairs. So
Yeah.
we can't judge other people whenever we say, oh, well, you know, they're going to worry about me, and they're going to judge me for having type 1. And if I'm mad, they're going to think that I'm low or I'm high, or, you know, something, whatever is the problem.
Yeah.
And so the issue there is you have to talk to people, whether it be in the interview or whether it be after you're employed. It doesn't have to be in the interview. You don't have to be open with them and say that. Like you said, it takes courage to say that. You can. And Texas is a right to work state, and they can get rid of anybody for any reason, and they can block, you know, any kind of hiring process they want, because that's just the way the law's written. But they gave me a chance, and a couple departments now have given me a chance. And to me, it's huge, because I'm going to bust my butt in order to show them that they gave me a chance, and now I'm going to do everything in my power to succeed. And I hope that that's, you know, kind of the way that a lot of people think, but there's always people who are going to be slackers and things like that. But I hope that everybody would, you know, want to succeed. But diabetes is something that we think of constantly, like I said earlier. And there's a thing going around on social media for a while where there was 42 factors that affect our blood sugar. A lot of people think it's food, insulin, and exercise, but it's not. I mean, it's sleep, it's adrenaline, it's the weather, it's your mood, it's everything. And don't even get me started about, number one, women and puberty in general for teens, hormones. Man, they impact blood sugar like crazy. It's really interesting to see a non-diabetic's blood sugar compared to a diabetic whenever they drink a regular Coke or they go on a fire run or something else happens, whatever. And you start to experience that and you see. But even talking about non-diabetics, whenever we get into food and everything that we eat, you know, something that's diagnosed later on is type 2 diabetes. So could it be diet? Yes. I mean, do we need to improve our lifestyles? Yes. We all know that we could exercise more. It doesn't matter if you're you know, the fittest athlete out there. You could still do some kind of workout. I'm not saying that you have to do it 24 hours a day, but you still have lazy days. We all do. We all have problems, and we don't have workouts every single day. Same with firefighting. We don't work out every day. We don't train every day. We have some days where we just want some downtime. I'm driving to work tonight. I'll be on shift this weekend. We're still going to knock out some kind of training for the weekend shift, but sometimes the attitude is, oh, it's the weekend, we're just going to sit around and be lazy. And I mean, what happens if we get that call at 3 in the morning? Are you going to sit around and be lazy at that time? What if it's 3 in the afternoon? I mean, same thing. You could be taking a nap, but at the same time, I'm focused on my diabetes and then the call. Now, if I'm going low or something's happening on the call where I'm pumping or anything like that, I am going to address the issue, even if it's a medical call. I'm going to address the issue with the patient rather than worry about myself. I'm going to address the issue with getting the guys water or being on air or whatever the situation is. And then in a second, because I'm not going to just drop dramatically, my blood sugar wise, I'm going to alert somebody and let them know. There's some guys that I know that say they're type 1s and they're firefighters. And whenever they're on shift, they keep their blood sugar around 200 just so that they don't go low, go high, and everything like that. Well, that's damaging their body slowly over time. It's impacting them huge in the long run. And they could be those people that we respond to one day that doesn't have a foot, doesn't have a leg, everything like that. And so it's always important for us to take care of ourselves no matter what. But obviously, whenever you've got some kind of an autoimmune issue or something else going on with you, you have to worry about it a little bit more. And I think that's something that's really important. And we know it in the back of our minds, but we don't always do it. And I mean, that's a lot of things in life. I think accountability is huge. I mentioned that right now. I'm doing a training on that tomorrow, but I think accountability is huge because we have to hold ourselves accountable. Because like you said earlier, you were talking about it, and that's something that was addressed to me long ago from my dad, was the victim mentality. Don't play the victim. And it's funny because whenever something happens, I tell my wife that, and sometimes I can hear my dad coming out of my mouth, but playing the victim and not holding ourselves accountable is just going to get us in trouble in a big way, and it's not going to be good for any of us.
Yeah. And one thing I want to go back to real quick, and it's kind of what started your last little bit there, is being open about what you got going on. And I talked about it's hard for us to be honest about that stuff, but I had a conversation here just the past couple of days with somebody in my department about some issues that they're facing, and it's totally not related to what we're talking about, but the mindset is still the same. And what I told him is, we're here. Most people are here a third of their life. You're obviously there a lot more because you're doubling up, but we're there with those people a third of our life. Obviously a lot of people consider that your second family. Hopefully that's what you consider. So my thinking is, why would you treat those people differently than the people that are your real family? If that's your second family, if you're spending that much time with them, why would you hide something like that? Especially when, like you kind of touched on several times, there could be issues coming up that happen to you that once you get to that point, you need their help. And if they don't know what's going on, that's a bad place to be. And I would think if I was put in that spot, as in maybe your coworker, your crewmate, and something happened, you were low and needed help and went unconscious, whatever, and I didn't know that you even had that, man, when we got you straightened out and back healthy, there'd be some stuff to talk about, because I would not,
sure.
And so and hopefully there's not a lot of that. I mean, surely people are being honest enough about what's going on to involve the people they're with for at least 24 hours. But I'm sure there are some of that out there. And so, man, if that is you, and it doesn't have to be anything that is going to have an impact like that, you have got to be honest with those people, because those people are the people that could be helping you when it goes bad. So you got to be honest about that.
Yeah, I think there's a big saying in the fire service that, whenever we drive in, we leave everything at the gate. We drive in and we got to be the same person on shift every single time.
Yep.
And I call bullshit on that. I mean,
Oh yeah.
you can't
Oh yeah.
expect somebody to do that. If you're going through a divorce, you're going through
Yeah.
depression, God forbid somebody loses a child, something happens in their life that is so dramatic. Obviously, them getting diagnosed with diabetes, what if a family member died or something happened? What's going on? You don't know. And if we choose to shut everybody out and not even tell them that's going on, or if we have a policy or the mindset of we don't need to know what's going on in your personal life, like you said, it's your second family. What do we do off shift? We go get breakfast. We go hang out. We
Yeah.
surround ourselves with each other's families if we can. Um, and so if we don't know that stuff's going on as a crew, then and we don't understand why this person's being so lazy, or whatever, they're moody or whatever's happening in their life, and maybe only the captain knows. I'm not sure, if they would even talk to anybody, but somebody knows. Then I think that's a little bit of an issue. I'm not saying that you have to bring all your problems to work either, but
Yeah.
obviously if something significant is going on, but I've heard you say it before in the podcast too, if you come in, you're like, hey man, I had a horrible shift last night working at my other job, ambulance company, fire department, whatever. I just want to sleep today. I'm having a bad day. You want to have a lazy day, then that's totally different than, dude, we just worked a pediatric arrest last night, and I mean, my mind's not right and everything. I mean, there's also services like chaplaincy programs that we can call and get you some help. I mean, some kind of critical incident stress debriefing stuff going on, and I think that might be something that we might need to send somebody off like that. Like, I mean, every 5 seconds it seems like a first responder's going off for a COVID test these days. What if they need to go off and get some professional help for some mental stuff? And I think that's a huge issue too in the fire service. I have actually done another podcast on that, on just mental health, and talked about firefighting in type 1 and some of the issues in there. But I mean, it's hard to say. How often do we hear about a first responder committing suicide?
Yeah.
LODDs even happen. They walk upstairs and they're not there anymore because they've just had so many inner demons going on, and it's stuff that we don't talk about. It's stuff that needs to be addressed. And this is something that I wanted to get out, was like autoimmune, mental health, anything. If you have an issue, if you have something going on in your life that you think that you can't get over, there's help, there's people, and you are strong enough in order to get there. It's going to take some work. Stuff doesn't happen overnight, so it's going to take some time, but you can do it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that topic you just brought up, you're expected to leave things at the door, and it's business as usual, and we're good when you walk in the door. I've talked about that before, and I feel like anybody that really expects that truly hasn't lived through much, because if you've lived through some stuff, you wouldn't say that, because you can't just shut the door on one part of your mind and open the door on another. When you get to the firehouse, it doesn't work. You're not going to be able to leave some of that stuff behind, and there's a balance. Like you said, if you're having a bad day, if there's some serious stuff going on and your mind is not right, man, okay, I get it. Talk about it, be honest about it, sit down, get some of that stuff out. But, get up, let's go do some training. Let's go work and do something that gets you out of that kind of mindset, get you off of the couch, get you out of the funk. I'm not saying just be heartless and put somebody out in a 8-hour on air workout because they're in a slump. No, but those things are what will help you get over that, getting over that little hump, just getting your mind off of something, going out and having fun doing something. Those things are important. And like you said, there is a difference of man, you have one bad day here and there, but you also got to think, and this is something that some of my guys have talked about at my house, is if I say, man, we're not going to do anything today because I'm just not feeling it. Okay, well, next shift, one of the other guys says the same thing. Okay, well, let's not do anything today. Well, the third shift, another guy. So yeah, I get it, but at the same time, we got to keep going. We got to find ways of just getting out there and keeping that ball rolling.
Yeah, one of my favorite excuses in there is holidays.
Oh yeah, oh
I love to have the holiday mindset because maybe you start off with Halloween. I don't know, start off with Halloween, and then you go to Thanksgiving, and then you go to
Chinese New
Christmas,
Year.
and then you do Arbor Day. I don't even know. I mean,
Yeah,
when do you stop? Valentine's
yeah,
Day. I don't get it, but yeah, I mean that's definitely a huge issue is as having the mindset that you know I'm not feeling it. And so I'm just going to go sit in my room and do absolutely nothing and shut everybody out. But like you said, man, go out and train and go out and work out and stuff. And you'll just get your mind off of those ideas. I mean, I will say that just as a type 1, I can't think like that because whenever I'm working out and stuff, I'm always worried about my blood sugar as well. But
yeah,
I do always have my kit. And I mean, for those who can't see it, whatever. I carry around my box with me, and I got my glucose tabs, and I've got my test strips and meter and everything in here, and then and plus an extra pod. And I carry that around with me everywhere. I grab it whenever we go on calls, toss it in the truck, toss it in the engine, and then carry around the station and have different things going on whenever I'm working out, or whenever we're training and everything like that. And I mean, my captain is pretty understanding. There was a time where we were pulling lines off the truck in a parking lot, just doing some training, and I did it the first time, and unfortunately, because it happens, adhesive doesn't stick, and my insulin pump was coming off, and I said, "Oh man, I'm really worried now. I don't have insulin, coming in and everything. It's taking us a little bit to get back to the station. The other guys are pulling lines, and I felt a little bit shaky, so I popped a glucose tablet, but I said." Hey, Kat, do you mind, if I skip out this next rotation because I don't have an insulin pump right now? I don't want to start doing some exercise because cardio will bring down your blood sugar. Doing some exercise, pulling the lines and everything. Not trying to get out of the training, but
yeah,
still trying to be mindful of everything and take care of myself. Because at times, there's also times where you do have to take care of yourself, where you have to say, you know what? And I mean, if you're that person, then say, guys, I just need some time, just leave me alone. Whatever it's got, like you said, you got your inner demons and stuff, but you might just need to think about it. You may be praying. I mean, my grandfather, he's 89 years old, and man, still prays the rosary every single day. And so you could go in your room and be praying for, 20, 30 minutes. And so whatever you have to do to just kind of change your mindset. The event doesn't change. The activity may help you somewhat. It's like going home. You leave home with a busted pipe. Well, whenever you get off of your 48 hours, you got to go home. And unless your wife or somebody called a plumber, then you got to go home to a busted pipe. The problem is still going to be there, but don't simmer about it for that entire time. Don't think
yeah,
about it. Just try to change your mindset in some way, because it's just there's nothing you can do to change it. I think something that was huge for me. I read it back in November after looking at it again with Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People,
mm-hmm,
and worrying about our circle of concern, our circle of influence, and our circle of control. There's only so many things that we can control, and they all
yeah,
have to do with us. Our circle of influence is who we surround ourselves with, and we can't control other people's actions, and we can't control things that are outside of our realm. I can't control what's going on in my house whenever I'm at the fire station. I
yeah.
can't control other people's actions who are in the fire station with me. I can only control myself, my mood, my actions, my abilities, everything like that. So I think that's huge.
Yeah, and that's definitely something, and I've talked about it several times. That is, I guess you call it that. That has been a very big mindset shift for myself, or at least that has been an area that I have been working on creating a mind shift or mindset shift. Is, if I can't control it, then what does it matter? Well, why am I going to sit here and worry about? Why am I going to sit here and let it ruin my day? Because that has been me. I have been that person that has allowed some goofy policy coming out to ruin my day or ruin a tour, even, several shifts in a row. And it's stupid. There's no reason for it. Me being mad is not going to change it. Obviously, that it's in place. So I can either sit there and waste my time, waste my energy, waste the morale and attitude of, I'm a station officer. So I'm actually even making it worse because I am creating that for not just me, but the entire shit or the entire crew. Or I can just say, all right, it is what it is. We're going to do the best we can. We're going to make the best out of it that we can, and worry about the other things that we can't control. And that's big for me too. And I'm glad to hear you kind of talk about the same thing, because that is something I feel like a lot of us need to hear, especially nowadays. There's so much negativity out there. It's just like you have to try harder to avoid it than you do to be consumed by it. I'll say that it's everywhere if you allow it to be everywhere. And so just kind of letting that go to other people that want it. And I'm just going to worry and focus about the positive stuff. And so that's good stuff to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I always remember from, I guess, whenever I was a kid, but I was growing up, I remember somebody saying that it takes more muscles to frown than it does to smile. So whenever you're doing a little bit of a workout, just smile. And I think that goes big with the positivity to the negativity. And like you said, I mean, it's so hard to, especially social media, you get on there and everybody just wants to complain these days. And just, I mean, it's just constant complaining about everything in the world. Yeah. And to me, that's a real big problem with the diabetic community as well, is everybody wants to complain about their blood sugar, and they play the victim. They play woe is me. They complain that, oh, they ate this pizza and now their blood sugar is spiking like crazy, but they know that they shouldn't eat it. Or maybe it is a lack of education. I don't know. But still, at a certain point, 50 years in, and you're still making the same complaints. I mean, what's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting different results. So it kind of all stems from that. And I think that, making a little bit of a change whenever you're in that funk, or you've got the negativity, you've got everything, not going your way, just trying to change things up a little bit. It works.
Yeah, that's for sure. So I guess I want to real quick kind of go back in time here, but back to this time of, I think you said 2007, when you're 19 years old, you have the auto ped accident. So just talking a little bit about who you were back then. You're 19, obviously you're still young, but you're out of school. Did you know what you were wanting to do at that point in life before?
Right. Yeah. So this is probably surprised some people, and everybody from high school not so much, but up until I was about 18, I actually wanted to be a priest. And so I thought about it long enough. Well, I'm sorry, until I was about 15. I kind of told everybody until 18, but I had a time in there, and I'll get into the religion just a little bit, but again, everybody's got their own opinions and stuff. That's fine. But this is my story. I kind of stopped believing up until about the point of being 15. And I was looking for things out there, but I actually have it on the wall behind me. It's called When the Well Runs Dry. I read a book offered by my theology teacher. I went to a Catholic high school here in San Antonio, and I read it, and I didn't get much out of it, but whenever I was in the hospital, I read it again. It changed a lot of things for me. But I stopped believing all that time, and I say that God had a wake-up call for me, and he showed me the light. The problem was that it was headlights. So for me, it was a huge life change. That night, I was going to I was at a bar, and I was hanging out with friends and stuff, but I hadn't had anything to drink at the time, but I was already going to break curfew. I got hit at 12:09 a.m. And I was walking across the street. Unfortunately, I was holding a hot and spicy in one hand and some McDonald's fries in the other hand. So I lost all that food. But the car hit me, and whenever I flew 30 feet, my friends went up to me and everything, and they saw that I wasn't breathing, and unfortunately, San Antonio Station was a long way away. So it took them about 8 minutes to get there. And I only go off of what my friends say. The police report, unfortunately, it even had the wrong description of me. It said the guy didn't appear to be intoxicated. When my friend said the first thing he did was jump up on their shoulders whenever he walked up. He had driven a long way, and then he ran over, and the first thing he said was, "I swear I haven't been drinking." So it was kind of suspicious at the time, but
Yeah.
it is what it is. So it took San Antonio about 8 minutes to get there, and whether or not I was alive during that time, I don't know. But most of the time, whenever we hear about it, it's 4 to 6 minutes. You lose about 60% of your brain capacity and stuff like that without oxygen. So the whole time, I've always told the story, and everybody kind of says I'm a miracle. I don't always think of myself that way, but whenever I was in the hospital, they also told my parents that I would never walk again, and then came back like 25 minutes later and said, "Well, we can put this rod in his leg, but he's going to be in a wheelchair for 3 months, and he'll be on crutches for another 9 months. It'll take him about a full year to recover." And so I had a titanium rod. I had a compound fracture in my femur and 2 fractures in my left hip. So I have a titanium rod in my femur and 2 pins in my hip. And I was in the wheelchair for 5 weeks, and I was in the wheelchair for 3 weeks, and I was on crutches for another 5 weeks. At 3 months, we walked into the doctor's office, and he said, I can't explain it, but I guess it's youth. I don't know, because like I said, I was 19 at the time. I fought really hard in physical therapy in order to get out. But it was my family, it was my friends, it was all my support, and it was my determination in order to get back. I looked around the hospital and I looked around the rehab place, and I said, I'm not going to stay here. I mean, I brought down the age 60 years in that place, So it was something that showed me that I can do anything I want to do. And it was probably about 4 months later that I started talking to people and realized I had become a lifeguard at Six Flags Fiesta, Texas here. And I had talked to the EMTs, and I realized that my journey was going to be getting to firefighting and obviously being an EMT as well, because that was part of the job. So I started looking at that, and I said, well, they saved my life, so I'm going to go back and save other people's lives. And it was impactful for me because that hit me, and it changed my life from that point on. We all have determining factors. Some of us, we might have grown up with a parent who was a firefighter. We might have, looked at it on career day and been like, oh, that's what I want to do. Other people have things like happen to me and said, this is something that impacted me so much that I'm going to change. So it was just kind of something that changed my life at that point. But I mentioned before that I was at a bar. Well, I was going to break curfew to go to a lingerie party. And I wasn't doing drugs. I wasn't really drinking. I was 19 at the time. I was hanging around with a bad crowd, though. Yeah. And God love him, my father, it was about 2.5 miles. Every single day I was in that rehab place, he visited me, and he was there at his lunchtime. Even if I was asleep, even if I was at PT, he'd just sit in the room. And it just showed me the love that he had. And it honestly changed our relationship from that point on. I mean, ever since then, he's been my best friend. And it's crazy to say that for my father, obviously, but it's a relationship that has just impacted me so much during all that time. And the love that my family had for me and everything from that point on, it changed. And I think whenever I was a kid, I started to say I love you and stuff like that. And it might have been on a Hallmark movie that my mom made me watch. I don't even remember, but I said, "I love you" every single time I saw them, and it was a running joke. But that time, for some reason, I hadn't said I love you to somebody, and it impacted the relationship. And from now on, it's still a thing. I mean, whenever something like that impacts your life, it's something that you always think about, that not coming home, whether it be firefighting, whether it be just driving to work. And so every single time I see somebody, I say, and obviously family member, but I say, "But I love you," and that's the last words that we ever say. And since I've lost family members since then, I can honestly say that's the last thing that I ever heard from them and they ever heard.
Yeah.
And it spread around to everybody. Everybody started doing it to everybody else. But it's just something like that. Obviously, an event like that just changes your life. And as you said before, I've kind of addressed it with other people. I've had three major impacts in my life: the breaking my leg at the station, getting hit by a car, and now type 1 diabetes. And every single time I see events that happened before where I was steered in a different direction or things weren't going right in my life, and I changed my life from that point on. I can tell you, before type 1, I was eating like crap. I mean, I had to come home and throw away all kinds of stuff because 4 days before that, I had gone with my mother-in-law to Walmart and bought all the after Christmas candy. So I don't even know how much chocolate and everything I had. So I had to get rid of that stuff. But it changed my mindset in taking care of myself and improving my health overall. And now that's what I've tried to do so much for other people. It doesn't matter if you're low carb, it doesn't matter if you're vegan, keto, anything like that. No matter what,
Yeah.
is you're taking care of yourself. And I think that's important for diabetics, and I think it's important for non-diabetics. I think it's huge for firefighters, though, as far as taking care of our health and training and working out in general.
Yeah, absolutely. They when that happened, you're in the hospital, you're in PT and all that, trying to get back. Did you ever have, we talked about the whole victim mindset and stuff like that. Did you ever have some of that, that feeling sorry for yourself, why does this happen to me, and all that? You obviously had a very quick recovery, so I think it's a pretty safe bet to say you didn't stay in that mindset long if you did, but was there ever any of that?
Honestly, there's probably still thoughts of what exactly is God's plan, but there was a point in my life where I realized what his plan was for each situation. Whenever I was hit by a car, I went on an Acts retreat, and we were in the middle of the retreat, and I felt a calling. It was just within me to kneel down, and at that point I was still on crutches, and somebody came over and supported me and stuff. And it was while we were looking at the Eucharist, and I said, "What did you want from me?" And there was something that was inside me, and he said, "This is what I want you here for." And so that was a huge impact for me. Obviously, I heard God talk to me, not like voices in my head or anything like that, but just felt it, just an experience. And that was huge. And then for my for getting hit by the car, obviously I was on that different path, and it changed everything from there. From having my leg broken, I thought, well, I was 4 days away from, making this department, and things were going to change. And I thought for a long time, but I still fought at physical therapy, and I still fought. And actually during physical therapy, I found a guy that was a retired SAFD guy, and he was wearing an insulin pump, and I didn't realize he was a firefighter, but I saw his insulin pump. So I started talking to him, and he was retired. He had already done 30 something years experience with SAFD. And so I thought, well, man, if they hired a type 1 back in, the 70s or 80s, there's absolutely no reason why I can't get on with a big department.
Yeah.
And I mean, I tested everywhere I possibly could, but I got in with my department, and I'm very happy where I am now, and our area is growing huge, but our mindset changes whenever we hear about others' success. And I think that's what's important with social media too, and getting away from the victim mentality. So it was influenced by others as well as kind of influencing myself, but that it still was there for a long time until I got my job. Whenever it's like, okay, I mean, I got 3 jobs in a matter of a week. I had 2 part-times and 1 full-time. And it was like, I mean, after a while, I started to figure out that it was a little bit better situation than what I had before I broke my leg, than the department I was going to. more money, a little bit closer to home, a little bit different people and stuff like that, and room for
Yeah.
growth. So in the end, it changed. And for type 1, like I said, it kind of changed the way I ate, the way I took care of myself health wise and stuff like that. But there's a lot of people that have that mindset of woe is me, and why me, and what can we do. And something that we say in the diabetic community whenever somebody's diagnosed is like, welcome to the club that you never wanted to be part of, but you're so glad you're here because you have all that support, because we're all here for each other.
Yeah, that's good. And man, quite the story. And to be honest, I'm pretty honored to have you on to tell these things. This is, again, I keep saying it, but this is exactly kind of why I wanted to get you on here. And you went way above my expectations. You have a lot of other things going on, obviously, that even enhanced that mindset of not giving up, that mindset of overcoming challenges. And again, I'm not a victim, I am the victor type mindset. And so I really appreciate you coming on. I love the story. You have so much to give, and I'm excited to maybe be a little bit of that that journey for you, because I know there is going to be a lot more to come. And I hope that you, and this, I'll just kind of pass this along to you as some advice. I'm obviously, I'm on the starting line of my journey as well. I haven't been doing this very long, but one thing I've just tried to keep is just an open mind and keeping my eyes open. And if there's something that comes up that feels like, well, maybe I should try this. That's exactly why I'm sitting here with you right now. I am not somebody that would be a podcast host. It's not my personality, but like you said earlier, I felt that calling. I felt something pushing me in that direction. And so I've tried to keep an open mind. I've tried to keep my eyes open for opportunities. And so that's kind of what I will try to pass along to you, because hopefully, well, I'm not going to say hopefully, these opportunities will come. There will be lots of chances for you to share your story, spread your message. And so I look forward to seeing more from you and where all this takes you. And so thank you very much for your time here today.
Yeah, I really appreciate it, man. Thanks a lot. And I'll say that, I've been a listener now for a while for the podcast, but I really appreciate everything that you got going on here, because you've had some great guests, and then you've got some guys that, like me, are not so much in the light of the fire service. And like you said, you got to start somewhere. So if you start from the bottom, eventually you get to the top. You may be in the middle, whatever, but that's the thing that I've seen a lot of influencers say too, is some people are like, how do I start? And I kind of thought that way. The only thing I did was, and this is my name on Instagram, is the T1D Firefighter, is I put myself out there as a T1D firefighter. And maybe it's because I was a firefighter, maybe it's because of some of the posts I was putting, I don't know, but it started getting followers. And I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. I'm reaching people. Well, then, and I have no idea what it says, but somebody interviewed me for a Finland newspaper. And I was like, what the heck, man? So I'm in an article, my picture's there, but all the words I can't understand. And so it reached international levels, and I was just like, whoa, that's crazy. That's because in Finland, you can't be a type 1 diabetic and a firefighter. So It was interesting enough to them. But I've been interviewed by other people on podcasts for diabetes and stuff like that. And it's impactful in order to get out there and hear other people's stories as well. And so it's really cool. Obviously, there's thousands of podcasts out there, but there's a handful of great ones out there. And I think that a lot of the messages out there need to be positivity and need to be overcoming these obstacles. And so I appreciate you giving me a chance to tell my story and get that message out there to people.
Well, thank you for that. One little side note, since you brought that up, something that really kind of was a light bulb moment for me is when I was talking with James Gearing, a huge podcaster. He's been doing it for, I think, 4 years, he said. Probably almost could call him the godfather of the fire service podcast. He was one of the first ones to get it going. But something he had talked about with me, and I can't remember if it was in the episode or just in the conversation before, but he said one of his most downloaded podcasts is with Danny Dwyer, a big name in the fire service last year because of his event that got him basically demoted and all that in Atlanta for the grab on a fire. And he said, that's one of his most downloaded episodes. But if you think about it, the day before that happened, in the big scheme of things, who knew about Danny Dwyer? That wasn't a big name. But the person that Danny was is the same. You know what I mean? That story was the same. It just took a big, social media event that brought him into the limelight. But that guy has been the same for a long time. And so that kind of made me think, man, that's absolutely true. I love having, the big names on that I look up to and that I've learned so much through writing and all that stuff, because I just love hearing from them and talking with them personally. But at the same time, there are a lot of people out there, and not just firefighters, just people that have great stories that you just don't hear about. And so that, again, that is kind of another mindset shift of mine, is to try to find these people too, because their story needs to be told. And so that's kind of where I have been and in the process of this kind of evolution of the podcast. And so you're kind of one of the early, I would say early people to kind of gear towards that direction. So do you have, before we leave, I'll let you kind of plug any resources, any social media, whatever you want to plug, but do you have any kind of thing in closing that you didn't get to mention, anything that's on your mind before we go?
I think one of the big things is just remember that every day is not the same. There's going to be ups and downs. Obviously, with your blood sugar, there's going to be highs and lows. And I put this all the time on my social media, but they're in type 1, type 2, gestational, anything. There's no such thing as a perfect diabetic. So there are so many people out there that want to, criticize everything that other people are doing. Again, it goes with the circle of influence and circle of control. Don't worry about anybody else. You may see me post flatline graphs, but again, it's maybe a flatline graph for 24 hours one day, and then the next day I have wonky blood sugars. It just depends on the activities that I'm doing and everything else. But don't beat yourself up, because in the grand scheme of things, especially whenever we get our A1Cs, which is a measurement of about 3 months of our blood sugar, you're living for 85 years or, whatever the life expectancy is these days, then it's a very small, 24 hours is a very small amount of time within that 85 years. So just don't beat yourself up. And I think that goes with everything in life. We all have bad days. So just keep on working.
Absolutely. Where can everybody find you?
Yeah, so I've got my Instagram. It's at and then _ T1D Firefighter. You can also email me. I've got an email with just my name, Kyle.Kondoff @Yahoo. If you got any questions, concerns, you want any kind of help, resources, anything like that, I've got a ton. And then you can also find me on Facebook, the same thing, Kyle Kondoff. That's KyleKondoff. So
perfect, man. Again, I appreciate it. I thank you very much for sharing your story, and I hope the best for you. I can't imagine that there's a ceiling to the things that you can do for this world and the fire service. And so I appreciate that, and just thank you for sharing.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me again, man. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. So thank you, everybody out there, for listening. I hope that this kind of added some value as much to your lives as it did mine. Inspiring stories. Like I said, there's a lot of them out there, and hopefully I'll be able to to find more and share those with you. Look forward to getting back on next week and just reaching out and touching some more lives. And so until then, stay safe, take care of each other. Thank you.